hello, or Bahamem in Arabic. Welcome to the G'day Sharm El-Sheikh podcast for 2022. This is the Business Council for Sustainable Development's daily program, live via Zoom from the climate change negotiations. My name is Andrew Petersen, and you join me and apparently over 35,000 people from across the world at the UN climate negotiations this year. This year's climate conference may actually be one of the most challenging yet. When you think about the leaders convening at Glasgow's COP26 in November of last year, the climate was at the top of the agenda. But now we've got a war in Ukraine, we've got a global energy crisis, and we've got domestic gas bills that have become the focus of attention. Nevertheless, Africa's water stress, catastrophic floods in Pakistan, unprecedented droughts in Africa, China and Europe, and hurricanes hitting Caribbean countries have kept climate action very much on the to-do list. And then, of course, there was Australia. Fascinatingly, a loss and damage conversation has already arisen, where the State of New South Wales councils are threatening to start closing roads if they don't get more funding from state and federal governments. Take the Blue Mountains, for example. Extreme weather has already caused $400 million worth of damage, the Mayor told The Guardian Australia recently, which is actually about 10 years worth of roadworks in just 12 months. And there's an interesting factoid, the council's income is just $90 million a year. So, as I said, I, along with the parties and the observers to the 27th Conference of the Parties, are coming to you from Sharm El-Sheikh, which is the Egyptian resort town between the desert of the Sinai Peninsula and the Red Sea. And before we introduce the speakers for this morning / evening, let me tell you a bit about the program. We're drawing on an international cast of policymakers, business people, civil society, Indigenous and academic peoples during the course of the 2 weeks. I've got a pool of 35,000 to talk to, which at the last counting are the figures from the UNFCCC, and apparently the highest number of registrations of any UNFCCC conference ever. And this includes nearly 10,000 NGO participants already. And they're going to bring you, not all of them, but some, insights, views, fears, and most importantly, their contribution to this global fora on climate action. And it has to be said, thanks to Greta Thunberg, yes, in action as well. So each day we will welcome onto the program those who are here so they can share with you what they are seeing, hearing, presenting, announcing, and giving you their thoughts on why it's relevant to business as well as business in society. For this year, we'll also pick up on something that we did last year, which was each day giving a sense check from our commentators and our intelligence sources on how they think the COP is progressing and tracking for them on our COP barometer. And I'll come to that tomorrow because not much has happened just yet. But one of the things that obviously is already in people's minds, and this is a bit of a scene setter for our speakers for today, is what does a good COP look like? Setting aside the obvious inadequacies of such a binary narrative, what will make this a good COP? And I'd like to show you some thoughts that have already percolated through the WBCSD network. So on the screen, you'll see a unique representation that our members have access to on a regular basis, and they've been kept up to date via a particular platform which we use to inform, educate, and provide resources to our members. And in this particular case, we've looked at the barometers of based on dream, good, bad, and horror. And in the vertical axis, the key issues of this conference: adaptation, finance, global stocktake, loss and damage, and of course, mitigation. We don't have time to go through all of them, but in the case of, let's say, finance, this is a big, big issue, not just for the conference, but particularly for our hosts. And the baseline, as it were, for what a good COP looks like in terms of finance is that the developed countries agree to at least double finance for adaptation from the 2019 levels by 2025 to roughly $40 billion. Now, that's what potentially looks like a good COP. What does a bad COP look like in this case? Well, developed countries failed to commit to more finance to adaptation, and that the $100 billion public finance remains unmet. And we'll go through some of the others over the course of the week, but we'll keep you up to date with what a good COP, bad COP looks like, along with the barometer during the course of the week and into next week. Now, about yesterday, if you want a rundown of my thoughts of yesterday, please go to my link page, because I've already uploaded that. And thank you to those who have thumbs up. Very much appreciated. My big takeout already is that the Egyptian people are absolutely wonderful in welcoming all of us from around the world and showing us what the capacity of this country is to build its next generation of leaders focused on climate. It's just absolutely wonderful to meet the young people who are the volunteers permeating right throughout the conference in all forms, whether it's IT, whether it's personnel support, transport, logistics. They are just absolutely fantastic. And it's a big takeaway, I think, from this COP about how to run an effective COP. All right, so about today's program, I will quickly bring up also this link, because I want to show not just you, the audience, but also our guest speakers. So again, for the benefit of our members, we've been tracking what events are coming up, where they are, how to get to them in the case of at least the three of them that you're going to be meeting in a minute, and why they're significant to our particular membership and to the broader business community more particularly. So today is the opening ceremony of what's called the Sharm El-Sheikh Implementation Summit, and that's taking up most of the morning. In fact, it's very hard for any of us who are not parties to the conference, because we're all observers in this particular case. We have been shut out, to be blunt, but certainly shut out until 2 o'clock. For the rest of the day, though, there are online opportunities, and I'll certainly be dialing into some of those. Side events, again, don't really start at the COP until tomorrow, but already countries like Canada and France, and also the Climate Action Innovation Forum, will be kicking off in one form or another during the course of the day. But let's now bring in our guest speakers and welcoming them to the 2022 G'day series, all three actually spoke last year. So you're seasoned commentators who join us at this particular venue for this year. So joining us is Dr. Mary Stewart, the CEO of Energetics. We then welcome Matthew Warnken, the CEO of AgriProve, and then Sue Brown, the Global Chief Sustainability Officer for Worley. If I can get you to take your, what's the word I'm looking for? Audio off mute. And welcoming you all to Sharm El-Sheikh, except for one of them. We'll get to that in a second. So first question to all of you. Numbered COP, please. How many COPs does this make for you thus far? Mary.
Who's starting? I did try to count, but then my brain and my mouth aren't necessarily making connections at the moment, thanks to jet lag. I think it's number 5. So not that many, but enough to know the ropes. And I think I will absolutely agree with you on the extraordinary welcome that all of the Egyptian people have been giving us. It's amazing. They are such a gracious people and have been so extraordinarily kind. I'm not saying it's not complete chaos in some instances.
Totally.
But there are people out there to help you through it.
Absolutely. And the other thing I forgot to add was dates. I love dates. And I had completely forgotten that Egypt is the home of dates.
And I got a plate of fresh dates as a welcome present to my room. I may never leave.
Looking out over the Sinai Sea with a date. That's heaven to me. Matthew, numbered, please. How many COPs thus far?
This will be COP number 5 for me, Andrew.
Congratulations.
So 5-timer club for fans of Saturday Night Live. But the amongst those five, so yeah, not a lot in the global context when you're sort of looking at COP27, but was able to be at the Paris COP, which was good, and also last year's Glasgow COP. So some of those key milestone COPs. And I can't say definitively that I've been to it yet because I'm still not quite there. Closer than Sydney, but due to some travel mishaps, stuck in Paris, but heading to Sharm El-Sheikh this morning.
Oh, Matthew will always have Paris. So, Sue, speaking of Glasgow, how many COPs is this for you?
Well, I am the novice because actually in Glasgow, we weren't in the blue zone. So we were doing some peripheral events. So this is really my first proper in the blue zone COP, although, yeah, obviously had an interest for many more years than that. But here we are. And we had a good wander around yesterday.
Right. Well, I think you're entitled to at least a 0.5. Even if you couldn't get into the blue zone, you were part of the COP process last year. So we'll make that 1.5. And it's interesting you raised the blue zone. It's a massive blue zone this year. I couldn't believe how vast. It is very much a horizontal COP in the sense that you have to walk absolutely miles to get anywhere. So let's stay with you. Why are you here at COP?
Look, we're here. Yeah, we've done a lot of work with Princeton over the last couple of years looking at the delivery challenge on the supply side of the energy equation. And we're really looking to kind of shine a light on this issue because not a lot of people are talking about the reality of what it's going to take to build out the low carbon infrastructure at the pace and scale that mid-century actually demands. So I'm speaking at a number of events through the week with different partners of ours that we're working with on different elements of what we say needs to change in project delivery. So yeah, with HSBC tomorrow and the Climate Leaders Coalition in Australia on some Scope 3 issues on Wednesday morning, and then hosting an event of our own at the Pavilion. So we're really here to contribute that perspective, I suppose, and also just track and monitor what the sentiment is and how things are progressing in the global dialogue on this.
Yeah, interesting you raised the issue of progressing because there was a fraught moment yesterday where there was the possibility of loss and damage not being on the agenda. I don't think that was ever the case that it wouldn't be, but the media certainly beat it up for a period of time that loss and damage wouldn't find itself onto the summit's agenda. So, strike one for successful negotiation. Thanks for that. Matthew, why are you coming? Because, forests aren't aplenty in the beautiful downtown Sharm El-Sheikh, I have to say.
Why go to agriculture in particular? So if you look globally at the climate challenge, 2/3 of it for energy use, 1/3 of it for land use, and agriculture plays a big in obviously land use. And yes, from an agri-proof perspective, soils is fundamental to any future of a safe climate, whether from an adaptation or a mitigation perspective. So when you unpack innovation, we need new products, we need new services, we need new models of production and consumption which are in line with the ecology of the planet. So looking at that real world climate finance is, for me, looking at where the innovation capital is, the risk capital. And there, in terms of running with the implementation theme, there are challenges with public finance commitments, but then how does that relate to actually innovation, which comes from the private sector? Public financing, not necessarily the best vehicle for driving in innovation, and we need innovation. We need lots of it. So why go to COP again? It is those Northern Hemisphere discussions, those Northern Hemisphere relationships, those Northern Hemisphere access to capital markets. So Australia, we do a great job in invention, we do a great job in innovation. We're not necessarily the best at funding and capitalizing, to the rate and the extent that we need to be material to climate change. So what that means is we need to be part of those discussions in the Northern Hemisphere, and COPs are as much from the business community.
Help me understand, what was the environment prior to COP26 compared to this one in relation to the appetite of finance to support decarbonisation, from your perspective?
Yes, so certainly Glasgow was a watershed moment in terms of people trying to access capital, and perhaps you could frame that by Glasgow was the Copenhagen that everyone wanted to have just sort of 12 or so years later, and
yes.
and there it was absolutely crystal clear that the finance, that industry, that oil and gas sector, too, were way out in front of policymakers. And I think that is the real sort of bedrock of optimism. Coming back to your earlier comments in terms of what does implementation look like with the context of a war in Ukraine and facing those headwinds and those challenges. Previously we had the global financial crisis. Now that was used as an excuse by people who hadn't, industries hadn't come on board, sectors hadn't come on board to delay action. I'm firmly of the belief that we're past that, so we're no longer having this debate. So we will overcome these challenges, because we won't go back to no action is still on the table. I probably guess the real world lived experience in terms of the difference, say, pre-Glasgow to post-Glasgow, is just the number of phone calls we start getting from people who are interested in new opportunities to invest into projects, to look at accelerating our progress, which again is encouraging, because when you start to look at the rate of change that we need to deliver, we really need to amplify efforts. That needs funding, so that needs 10 times the funding that we might have or otherwise thought. That, and actually, probably needs even more into the private sectors. Again, I'm a firm believer in the private sector delivering that innovation, and the big focus for innovation has got to be in the land sector. A lot of that innovation, say in the energy sector, has already happened, and then now it's sort of lower risk capital that needs to come and do the heavy lifting. But huge opportunities across the board, really, for innovation in the land sector in particular.
Yeah, thank you for that. So not much is happening. Okay, Mary, you've already identified what you saw as the success of this COP in a LinkedIn post that you did. Can you share and expand on what you said in that post? Because I found it very helpful. In fact, I stole it for some other purpose, with attribution, of course.
Well, why am I here at the COP? Really, it's to try and interpret what we see on the ground for businesses. So Energetics works with the biggest Australians, helping them decarbonize their business models. So that's what I'm trying to pull out of the COP. So what should businesses be watching out for? They should be looking for the what's happening on adaptation. And that links to what Matt's been saying, because if the global agenda moves forward, the finance will follow. So the private sector needs to get its head around what is innovative and how to spend adaptation monies. It's difficult to see the opportunity in adaptation, but that is 50% of the market for climate monies. And at the moment, only about 1% of the monies are going there. So adaptation from a business perspective is significant. The loss and damage discussion, as you said, is going to start raising its head, and then also looking and seeing where finance is moving to. But ultimately, from my perspective, a successful COP will be one that concludes with Australia getting a COP in the next couple of years, because that will really point the direction that Australia is going, and will absolutely signal to Australian businesses that they've got to change. And what we saw through the UK economy leading into the Glasgow COP absolutely can happen in Australia. And with if we do get an Australian COP, Australian businesses will have 24 or 36 months to really start ramping up their action.
It's interesting you raise the Australian piece in there, because that was the next question in my mind. For those of you who may not have seen, there's been an announcement in Australia that the Australian government will seek to champion Australia getting COP31 in 2026. So not the earlier expected COP29 in 2024. So the Swiss have won, and therefore they'll be hosting. But and I'm not asking the three of you for a political commentary in relation to COP26, when we had the Morrison government and now we have the Albanese government. but more broadly around what role does government now play in this agenda of implementation? Because it's a very different facilitative, accelerative, incubative role that a government must support business, community, Indigenous, and that's a particular focus of this this Australian government at this COP. What do you see are the key elements of that implementation role that government needs to play, whether it's Australia or others going forward? Firstly, Mary, and we'll go back the other way.
Well, I have said in public before, point in the right direction and then get out the way. And it's not as simple as that, but as a minimum, do that. And we have that now. So we have 43% emissions reduction by 2030. It's very clear where we need to get to. Don't put too many complicated stuff between now and there that slows down ambition and companies actually just getting boots on the ground and delivering. At the same time, I agree with Matt, it's difficult to see private sector money being spent on a lot of the deep innovation work. And really, government needs to fund the risk. And the best way that they can fund that risk is to de-risk innovation and building of new business models. So in the first instance, don't add too much friction to what's already happening. And in the second instance, really do put momentum behind innovation.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that de-risk innovation, because that's very much what successive governments in Australia have done in the land sector in relation to decarbonisation. Matt, what's your observation around its role going forward as opposed to the past? And are there lessons from the past that we should take into the future?
So certainly I'd echo Mary's comment about not overcomplicating it. So let's get the directions and sort of almost get out of the road. However, I'd almost say too, in without getting into the politics, like we need to depoliticize climate, and we need to get better at promoting the achievements that we have made in the Australian context. So it's a little known fact that, say, in the land sector, nearly 10% of Australia's land mass is in a nature-based solutions carbon-related project. Now that's an area 1.5 times the size of France. So this is a big chunk of land that we've already achieved through partnering with farmers, because none of this occurs in a vacuum. So I think part of the pathway forward is being able to promote what we've already achieved, as opposed to sort of putting all the past as like nothing's happened. There's been a lot of real work, lessons learned, models forged in terms of what's been happening in the last decade or so in certainly the land sector. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to go back to the Gillard government and start running a whole bunch of promotional workshops and printing out manuals, etc. Because we've done that. We can take a more sophisticated approach in terms of where does real pace and change come from. So I guess what I'm saying is we've got the ability not to be shadowboxing around, well, what do we think? We've got some strong lessons learned, and that these can shape programs going forward. I think it would be a terrible loss to cast everything 10 years as just all sort of inaction, ineffective. There are some real success stories, real world proven points as to what's worked. Let's amplify those proven points. And then maybe just the other comment I'd make too, which I think is going to be fascinating in terms of thinking about implementation into a safe climate, implementation around a safe climate, because that involves pathways to involving the mainstream businesses, mainstream industries. This is not about sidelining. It's not about sort of prototyping. It's not about doing little niche activities. This is looking at activities that do scale into the mainstream. And I think that will be a point of tension or a point of challenge in terms of envisioning what a global economy looks like, where the mainstream is brought in and we do make those big gains in achievements for emissions reductions, for carbon dioxide removals, and for almost an armistice it would be required in terms of the old battle lines of saying fossil fuels bad, sort of renewables good. You get beyond that and say we all need to transition to forms of energy that are low carbon, but we need the whole globe to get behind that. So in that implementation to that mainstream, I think there are will be a number of tensions arrive, but I don't think we've got the time or the luxury to sort of stand on minute academic detail, or to stand on all pathways and run as quick as we can. So I think promotion, learn what we've achieved in the past, and then plan those pathways in terms of incorporating that mainstream and charting a course to that safer climate.
Matthew, talking about don't want to deal in the minutiae. I'm sorry, have you been to a COP before? Sorry.
Yeah, but there are two COPs. It's and this is what I find fascinating. There's like the bureaucracy where it's tortured creation of text, but then around that because of that the sort of almost lodestone of policy making are the sort of real world implementers. So it is very much that tale of two cities in every COP, which is maybe why it might just work.
Fingers crossed. Sue, the Princeton University work is very much around this conversation of going forward and the role that government plays. Give us a sense of what significance you see that piece of work has for governments and potentially also for business.
Yeah, look, a couple of things. Just going back to the original question, I wholeheartedly agree with what Mary said about role in de-risking investment. I don't think it's limited, though, to just kind of new innovative technologies. It's also known technologies that are going to have to be deployed at a scale not previously seen, and so that therefore has some risk attached that might limit their ability to attract finance that government can help alleviate. I think increasingly as we look to the pace and scale issue, there's a role for government around reforming regulatory planning and permitting regimes and seed funding to look at new and innovative ways that we can do that and make data available to expedite some of those processes without doing away with the obvious environmental and social benefit of those processes. There's a role for government in ensuring that we have the right skills in our country to do this. And we need to also recognise that we are in competition now with the US Inflation Reduction Act. And if we don't recognise that and look at what we need to do to be incentivising industry here in the way that it is absolutely being incentivised now in the US, then we're going to miss out, because everyone's going to go to the US for their $185 a tonne of CO2 abated, via CCS, and not be doing it in Australia.
Yeah, that act has been already talked about in the last day, having been here, about it being such a massive attractor or a sucker of investment as a result of the signal. And as you've both indicated, or all three of you indicated, the de-risking by government is to intervene in supporting innovation as quickly and as at scale as possible. Last question, and it's rapid fire. What happens next? What are you doing today/tomorrow, Sue, Matthew, and Mary?
I'm having a quiet day at the hotel room preparing for the 5 speaking engagements I've got over the next 4 days. So I am preparing, mindful that the Blue Zone's effectively locked down today and going to be a bit of a nightmare. So quiet preparation.
I'm with you, sister. Yeah. Matthew?
Travel to get into Sharm El-Sheikh. So I think I arrive at midnight. So cross fingers actually get to the hotel.
Have you organised your land transport from the airport to your hotel?
I just thought it'd be really simple just to catch a cab or something like that.
Okay.
So what you're saying is maybe I should organise a bit better. General words of wisdom to live by. So what I'll be doing
risk averse.
After this call, organising land transport to make sure I get to the hotel.
To be fair, as Andrew and I've been saying, they're unbelievably welcoming here. The one thing is that the app really does work. And if you arrive at the airport and register the fact that you've arrived, land transport will be made available to you.
Yes, that's
Excellent.
very true. And I don't know for the other two, but did you have to have your passport checked by the UNFCCC before you had your passport checked by the Egyptian authorities? That was a first. It was very, very weird. And
the other thing, just because Mary just mentioned the app, we had some advice yesterday from our cybersecurity people around that app, and we've all now removed it from our phone. So you might want to read some of the commentary around security and surveillance aspects of the COP27 app.
It is, however, very useful because it has the bus timetable on it.
I did read that, but thought, look, that they want to know that the name of my pet cat. That's fine. I have no money to share. All right. So with that, thank you very much for being on the first program for G'day Sharm El-Sheikh. Very, very grateful to you all for your contribution today. And also, to be blunt, your contribution as representatives of your members of our organisation, not just for coming to the COP and sharing in what is a truly amazing event already, but also supporting our organisation for being able to be here. The couple of things just to wind up, that don't forget, you can re-listen or share this particular and all subsequent, when I can press the button, thank you, subsequent programs from each day, as they will be loaded onto our YouTube channel and via our LinkedIn page, and you can check now the chat function for those links. And if you know of any others who would find that it's of value to join the program, please send that link to them, and we would love to have them join in. Tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by representatives of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, our friends at We Mean Business Coalition, who will be giving you a really interesting insight into the both the physical and the programmatic interventions that are being made by business at this COP. I don't think I've ever experienced a COP where business is so in your face in the pavilions, and these are the exhibit areas. There is representation of the International Chamber of Commerce, there's representation of International Emissions Trading Association, representatives of WBCSD and Women Business Coalition and BSR and CERES. It goes on. It's just quite extraordinary. So we're looking forward to hearing from them and getting their take on what's happening. But for now, thank you so much. I am not going to attempt trying to say thank you in Arabic, that it would be insulting to us all. But for now, thank you so much. My name is Andrew Petersen, and goodbye for now. Thank you. Bye.